On this next episode of Learning to Cook on a Budget, we are making homemade blueberry muffins, and I have some really great hacks for you, including how to get the blueberries to stay put in the batter and how to make the perfect streusel topping that's the great complement to your blueberry muffins. And of course, we will slather them with butter after they come out of the oven. So let's get to preparing the batter. The first thing you want to do with a blueberry muffin batter is to get it really smooth. You don't want to overwork the batter, but you want to get the batter really nice and smooth so that as those muffins bake in the oven, the blueberries will kind of burst inside of the muffin. It'll incorporate nicely with the batter as it rises, and it just ends up being this perfectly soft blueberry muffin. Before we jump in with the batter, we need to get the oven preheating to 375, and we are going to grease. In this case, I'm going to use my square muffin tin. You can use a round one, you could do mini if you want, but I prefer to use this size for the blueberry muffins because I want at least a couple of blueberries in each of my muffins. And so we're gonna get that going there. Just get the bottom really well, a little bit more on the side of the wells is perfect. So let's then set that aside. To get this batter super smooth, we are gonna start with whisking together both of the sugars. So this is brown sugar and white sugar, half a cup of each. And I'm just gonna whisk kind of at each stage. And I'm whisking instead of folding because I, again, want this to be a really smooth batter. Next, I'm gonna mix in the eggs. The eggs and the sugar will cream together really nicely. Again, we want to do this one at a time to get that smooth batter. Next, I'm gonna add in a cup of sour cream. I love the tanginess and the moisture that sour cream adds to a muffin base. Again, it takes maybe an extra 2 or 3 minutes, but one ingredient at a time is really gonna make the smoothest batter. I almost forgot, one more wet ingredient is going to be a half a cup of canola or vegetable oil. This time I am going to combine the dry ingredients together before adding them final. So I'm going to do a teaspoon of salt and a teaspoon of baking soda. Just going to incorporate that just lightly with a fork. You could just spoon or a knife even. Just mix it in with the flour. Give it a little stir through. And now this is ready to go in with the wet ingredients. And I think I will do, again, to get that really smooth batter, I'll probably do 2 or 3 rounds of whisking. Okay, let's do a second round, and then we'll do that last round. Do a little scraping of the sides, making sure that you get all the flour off the bottom too. You don't want any left behind. Even though the batter's getting a little thicker, the whisk is doing a good job. You can adjust it to the flat whisk, sauce whisk too, to get it to kind of turn and smooth out. All right, last batch. Oh my God, this is the smoothest batter I think I've ever made. So the batter is ready, and now it is time to switch gears and get the blueberries ready to add into the batter. When it comes to adding the blueberries to your batter, before you fold them in, we're going to toss the blueberries. We're going to dust the blueberries in a little bit of powdered sugar. You could use flour as well, but dusting them in a dry ingredient like powdered sugar or flour is going to help them float in the batter and not sink down to the bottom of the muffin as it's baking. So I rinse these blueberries off, and I'm just giving them a little roll. Don't want to crush anything. We don't want to break any blueberries. We also don't want to break any once we get them into the batter. It's kind of inevitable. If it happens, it's okay. But hopefully dusting them and doing a gentle fold will help them stay put in the batter. We don't want them to sink. This is just a little powdered sugar. You can always add more or less. All we're trying to do is dust. So really we just need to light coating. We don't want too much sweetness. I like to use powdered sugar because it's just a nice complement. Blueberries are a little on the tartar side. You could use flour. That will also help the blueberries float in the batter. Now it's time to fold these in. We have our baby skin smooth batter and our lightly coated blueberries, and we are literally just going to gently fold them in. And then we're gonna transfer this. Oh, one already popped, I can see it. It's okay if they do. We just don't want too many of them to pop. This is a thicker batter, which is great. It's what we want. And then it actually gives this really cool purple color when it does. So for my smaller muffin tin, if I'm doing like mini muffins, I'll use like an ice cream scoop. I don't have a big enough ice cream scoop for this square pan. So I'm gonna use a 1/3 cup measuring cup to transfer this gorgeous batter into the wells. It's just a beautiful purple color, it really is. Maybe that's my favorite color in cooking and baking, is this purple blueberry color that sometimes happens. And we have just the right amount for 2 more, plus I'll scrape out this bowl with my trusty spinella to fill in a couple of these. You can literally see these blueberries floating on the top, which means they're gonna be nicely incorporated into the muffin as it bakes, and they won't drop to the bottom. Now that these are ready to go, we need to get the streusel in real quick, and then we will pop these into our preheated oven. Before we pop these guys into the oven, we have got to mix up this quick crumb topping. You probably already have all of these ingredients in your pantry, so if you didn't get them added to your grocery list, and not to worry, you can still get this made. We're gonna start with a 1/4 cup of white sugar and a tablespoon of flour, and I'm gonna toss that together. And then I'm gonna add a touch of cardamom. Cardamom is one of my most favorite spices. I feel like they should hire me as their marketing director. It's beautiful with blueberries, which is why I'm adding it here. It's just a great compliment. It's like a gourmet smoky sweetness. Not smoky in the cumin sense, but like smoky sweetness that just pairs really nicely with the blueberries and the muffins. So, and when I say touch, a couple dashes. It's not even like an 1/8 of a tablespoon's worth, but you want to be able to see it speckled in here. I'm going to shift all that over together, and then I'm going to pour the butter right on top, and then I'm going to use that fork to create this crummy streusel topping. Let me get this all incorporated, and it just smells fabulous from that cardamom. And then I'm going to just spoon a little bit on top of each muffin. And then the most important part of all, we're going to give it a little press. We want the streusel to stick to the batter, so we're going to give it a tiny bit of a press to get that to happen. So we want to evenly divide as much in the middle as you can. This is about a 1/2 forkful or so. You guys got to go in the other ones. If you need to make a tiny bit more, you could, but this should be plenty. Right on top. I like to try and get it as much into the middle as possible. Of course, it's not perfect. That's okay. You're going to get a little streusel with each bite anyways, but as even as possible. And then I'm just going to use the back of this fork. You could use your hands, but I'm just going to use the back of this fork to lightly press, and use the last of this to kind of fill in the streusel gaps. We don't want to leave any of this goodness behind, especially because of all that cardamom that's in there. Who needs more? You do. So we're just going to take the back of the fork and just sort of, I still want it to have a little streusel-y shape, but I also want a little bit pressed in. I don't want to crush the streusel, but we just need to lightly press. So it still has its streusel shape, but it's also not going to fall all over the place as it's baking. We want it to stick a little bit to the batter. We're going to bake these blueberry muffins with their streusel topping at 375 for 22 to 24 minutes. I usually will do the lower end of the baking time and then check the middle muffins at that point and decide if they need to stay in for another minute or 2. The blueberry muffins are out of the oven and they have been teasing me while they cool down just a smidge, and I cannot wait to dive in. So I'm just going to run my knife around and just try and carefully pull up without ruining my lovely streusel. It's stuck as it should with just the right amount of crumminess out of the top. And I'm going to, see, it's magical. That crustiness is exactly what we're after. Look at how our blueberries floated. They did their job staying put, thanks in part to that powdered sugar. This is just magical. So I want to remind you about tossing the blueberries in powdered sugar or flour so that they float in the batter. This was a thicker batter, so they had a better chance of floating, but if you have a thinner batter or a different type of recipe, anytime you're floating anything like that, you can toss them in, chocolate chips, especially if it's a looser batter. You can toss chocolate chips and some flour and then toss them in, help them float. And then of course, giving a little press to that streusel on top to help give it that little bit of crusty crunchy that you probably just heard. Hopefully you were able to hear that. We sure did. So that you get that magical bite. And of course, adding some butter to it before you take a bite. Super scrumptious. This is softened butter, of course, butter from the fridge and a hot muffin that's gonna melt right in. Here we go. Can you hear the crunch? Could you hear the crunch? It's so rude to talk with food in your mouth. I think this is my favorite muffin I've ever made. I'm not sad about the butter that is slathered on it. I'm not sad about this gorgeous purple color from the blueberries. I'm not sad about this crunchy streusel. This is like the most magical. Like, make these ASAP. We have new episodes of Learning to Cook on a Budget coming out every Wednesday at noon Central Time here on our YouTube channel. Every couple of weeks we do take a break to catch our breath and give you time to binge what is already out. So be sure to check out some of the other videos, learn something new. I'm always here to help teach you from start to finish how to cook and how to save money, and teaching some fun little cooking hacks along the way like we did here in this video. So please like this video. Also subscribe to the channel so you get notified when we release new episodes.